Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
That doesn't look like a Rebecca, but I'm not saying anything.
Rebecca, it's nice to meet you.
Could be a Rebecca. Could be anything you want.
It's John.
How are you, John?
Good. Rebecca's my wife.
I know. I knew online. I did have to do a little bit. I saw who's coming on. Who the hell is this guy? And I invited this guy on.
It's 2024. If you want to be Rebecca, you can
do
be
whatever
Rebecca.
You want, man.
That's the way this world works now. So
that's true.
And one of us is in Vancouver and the other one's in Toronto. So that gives you an idea of what you're up against.
Okay, right on.
Whatever makes you happy, you got to do. You got to have the wife come on too if you want, unless you got kids and stuff that you got to corral.
We just put them to bed. Yeah.
Awesome.
How old are the kids?
10 or almost 10 and almost 7.
Oh, they're nice and young still. Nice.
Yeah. That's
a long time ago, I felt.
Yeah, that was a lot of drama ago, actually.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember.
We have my kids are 22, just about to turn 18 and 16. So boy, girl.
I got
no wonder I have any hair left, to be honest.
That's why I have none. I got 28 and 26.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're adults. So yeah, it's a whole different game. You don't have to worry about 10 o'clock bedtime anymore, or 8 o'clock bedtime, or whatever.
Oh, yes, you do. You have to worry about your 10 o'clock bedtime.
Well, because nobody cares after that. You're asleep when they come home anyway. So whatever.
It's true. Mine.
You just learn to let it go.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're pretty excited to have you on. I was telling Phil just before he got on. I said we had done just so you get an idea too. So we had done a podcast with Salt Spring Coffee, I think, and we were talking to Mickey, the owner, and it's organic coffee, and they've been doing it for a million years, and he's really into regenerative farming, and they're talking about it within the coffee, and I guess in Colombia and Peru and wherever they're getting the beans, etc. And we just thought it was fascinating, so I started hunting online, looking for Canada.
Yeah,
and of course, not a hell of a lot comes up.
Right.
But there's an article with you, and I think with the wife, and it's going back a couple of years. And I started hunting. It took me a while, but I finally found you on LinkedIn. I told Fess that I'm going to call this guy on because we're trying. Our podcast is pretty much, we do a lot of CPG, so a lot of packaged goods, a lot of brands that you see on the shelves. But we have done some fisheries. We've had some farmers on. We've had people that owned a farm, the slaughterhouse, as well as the retail store. So we've tried to do some different things and really get people to understand how food gets to your table, where it comes from, why it's so important to shop more Canadian, because we really don't have we don't produce a lot of anything in our country, as we all know. And especially when you get into the raising of meats of any kind. Most of it's going to be institutional, industrial size. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the ideal for anything, and it puts a bad spin on all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping with you is you'll be able to walk us through this and
sure,
tell us what's going on, see what's happening. So I'll do the quick intro just so you know. John's on. John the farmer, Stonepost Farms, right?
Yeah.
In Alberta,
right.
Regenerative farming. For you, young man, all we do, very, very simple, totally unscripted. Where you are, where you came from, why you came from there, what you're doing now, why you're doing it, especially in this thing, because it cannot be easy to be a farmer of any kind in this country or in the world. So we're dying to hear the story. Next 45, 50 minutes is all yours. Him and I will interject periodically, mostly if we don't understand something or if we just kind of curious or
probably going to be most of
and it. Probably get hungry because you're talking food. So we're going to be all over this one. So really it's your show and light her up.
All right. My name's John Doherty. I own Stonepost Farms with my wife. We are near Wildwood, Alberta. So that's about almost an hour and a half west of Edmonton.
Toward Jasper?
Yeah, it's another 2.5 hours to get into Jasper.
Okay.
Currently on the farm, we raise grass-fed beef and grass-fed beef, pastured poultry. So meat chickens and turkeys in the summer out on pasture, and then we have free-range laying hens year-round. We used to raise pigs out on pasture, but the profit margins were pretty slim on pork, so we got out of them. And what else? We have a few beehives. That's more of a hobby thing. We have sold a little bit of honey in the past, and we used to do basically organic vegetables as well. But we've cut back on those just because of how much work it was. And I guess So I grew up on a farm. I'm from Southern Alberta, the far southwest corner. And farming has always been my dream. I wasn't sure how I was gonna do it, and we're still not making a full living off the farm. My wife Becky has a full-time job. She does project management and works from home. But it's a work in progress. Anyways, so we met in university, and Becky and I both went to University of Lethbridge, and that's where we met. I got a Bachelor of Science degree in environmental sciences and worked in the oil field for 10 years, as you do in Alberta. I got into a lot of like well site reclamation and that kind of work, spill cleanups. But I've always kind of been drawn back to the farm, and we're not on my parents' farm, but we moved to Edmonton for work, and then ended up finding some land out here by Wildwood that we could afford to buy, and I talked Becky into that we should move out onto a farm.
So your wife not from a farming family?
No, she grew up in a small town in BC near Radium Hot Springs.
Okay.
And her family had a trail riding business for a while, so she's very outdoorsy and into horses and stuff.
Well, the Invermere area is beautiful. I mean, it's lovely in these Kootenays.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. And your folks, though, is it just your mom and dad, or is it generational? Like, does it go back a bit, or you guys always been in the farms, your family, or?
It's like the farm my mom and dad are on. They started. My mom grew up on a farm close to there, and my dad is actually an Irish immigrant. He came to Canada in the mid-70s, and he didn't live on a farm. He didn't grow up on a farm in Ireland, but he grew up in a small town there, and as a kid, like helped out on some of the neighboring farms.
But he came to Canada in the 70s to do farming. Well, see, that's because you know what I mean. Because you're typically a lot of those. I mean, when you're talking countries like that, I mean, it'd be the last thing I would think you'd be trying to do would be coming to farming in the southwest corner of Alberta.
I think when he first
nothing wrong with the area, like the area. Yeah. Not saying that.
I think when he first came, he was he started out working on farms, but I don't think that was his main goal. He was mostly just looking for more opportunity,
right?
Because he was working in London for a while, early 70s, like digging. He was working in the subway tunnels in London, digging trenches underground for a few years in his early. Yeah, and then
that's not fun work.
No.
I mean, it's hard work, and it's it's honest work, but that's not fun work.
Very tough. Yeah.
Very baller. He worked in the packing plants down in Lethbridge for 13 years, and then when Canada Packers closed down, he got a job out. There's a cheese factory at Glenwood, Alberta.
Yeah, and
he worked there right up until he retired at 65, and built the family farm on. Well, it was mostly, I mean, on his days off, he was at home doing the farm work. But when he was at work, it was my mom and me and my brother and sister doing all the chores and stuff.
How big a farm is this?
It's pretty small. Like we started out on 80 acres when I was 6 years old. That's when we first moved out to the farm, and they've built it up to about 400 acres. And
remember, you're talking to city people. Right. So we're on 33 by 140, and he's on a monster, probably 60 by 120,
60 by
60 by
150.
130, 150.
150.
Yeah. So I don't think we classify as even tenths of
No.
acres. Just
No.
So we're
Right.
talking 80 acres of farming. It's small. It sounds.
I don't even
Anyone
think
Alberta-
that counts as like free range for chickens, like what I have. If you knock down my house and
No, there's no room.
grew grass over the whole thing, it still wouldn't be enough.
No, for a chicken, not chickens. Okay, well, so that's that. Well, I mean, in my head, it's. I mean, I know for Alberta terms, like in terms of ranching, it's not a million acre, but that's fair size.
I guess depends where you are. Like for compared to the average farm in Alberta or on the prairies, it's pretty small.
Right.
If you were to take that many acres and put it into like the lower mainland BC or southern Ontario, it would probably be a fairly sizable farm. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
So we out to Wildwood in 2016. We bought 160 acres here, and then since in 2019, the quarter section right next to us came up for sale, and managed to scrimp together enough down payment to buy it as well. And so we're sitting on 320 acres right now. And
wow. Okay.
I know. Wow. Remember, wow from the city. Wow. I know it's always perspective.
We're
right?
sorry, city kids.
No worries.
For all the Albertan farmers, I know, and for the BC interior, I get it. We're
no. For any farmer that listens to us, we apologize.
Yeah. Just let's perspective. We're coming from small lots. That's big farming.
Gosh.
So, and like most of agriculture on the prairies is you're producing commodity based crops.
Yeah.
Like live cattle are sold as a commodity, or if you're growing grain, that's all in the commodity markets. And selling into those markets, you're very much a price taker. You're paid whatever
it's set, right?
Whatever the markets are at any given. So to try to get around that and to make a little higher margin on our livestock and the vegetables and stuff, we decided to go the direct marketing route. So we're selling food directly to the end consumer mostly. And when we started out, it sounded like a great way to go. I don't know if you guys have heard of Joel Salatin or Polyface Farm. They're in Virginia, like down in the States.
Yeah.
And he's probably one of the grandfathers of this whole regenerative farming and like small intensive livestock intensive livestock, it would be not the right word to use, but very much land-based. Like
right.
He raises all his pigs and chickens and everything out on the pastures, and lots of rotational grazing and regenerating the soil that way. So I just, when we first moved out here, I was basically on a mission to be a full-time farmer and be able to make a living off the land. And so I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and started finding videos of farming and regenerative farming. And what first kicked me off, I found a guy in Quebec who was making a living growing vegetables on 1.5 acres. His name's Jean-Martin Fortier.
I've heard that name. I don't know where I've heard about it, but yeah, sorry, please continue.
He teaches like online courses on like small plot vegetable farming, just with high rotations. So they're getting a lot of production off really small areas of land. And that's what first sparked my interest. And I thought, if this guy can do it on 1.5 acres, I was like, I have 160 acres. I should have no excuse. That was my first thought. So yeah, we first got into the vegetables and laying hens, and we started out with 15 head of cows that we bought from my dad, and then it just got into our first farmers market in 2017. Becky was on maternity leave with our second child, and I was still working full time off the farm doing environmental consulting work. That first year, I managed to skip out of work every Thursday so we could go to the farmers market. We were just kind of winging it. Didn't really know what we're do. And then we got into a few more farmers markets and then we set up an online store and started doing home deliveries and stuff. And it was pretty crazy for a couple of years there. But then trying to do all the different livestock and the vegetables and everything was just too much for us to handle. So that's why we started cutting back, got rid of the pigs and started cutting back on a few of the things. And we're down to one farmer's market now. And then I do deliveries into Edmonton every 2 weeks and then out to Jasper every other week.
Okay. And so like in terms of vegetable farming, how much land are we talking now? Like, I'm assuming at the beginning it was pretty intensive, like you're using a ton of it, but
for vegetables, no, we're only ever had about 2 acres maybe. For
a lot.
The rest of the land was mostly utilized for pasture for the cattle,
right,
and growing hay, and we were rotating our pigs around out in the pasture too, just with like 2 strands of electric fence,
right.
Them in, and then we have our meat chickens. They're called chicken tractors, so it's like a 10-foot by 12-foot enclosure that just sits on the ground, and so the chickens are sitting on the dirt inside there. We need the enclosure just to protect them from predators, because we had ravens were really bad. They would come in and just peck their heads off, or we have lots of coyotes.
Oh, some coyotes.
Yeah, coyotes make sense.
Yeah, ravens. I've never heard about coyotes. For sure.
I heard of that, but okay. Wow.
Interesting. Yeah, the ravens were I was surprised too when they became such an issue. The first year we just had a big pen for the broiler chickens to run free in, and we had quite a few losses from the ravens, and they are very intelligent birds. So then we moved to the movable enclosures, and that then kept it safe.
I would not make it very far.
No. Well, I sound just tired from what you were saying. It didn't.
That's amazing.
I mean, I don't know. Between working full time, you've got 2 kids. You're not home. I'm assuming the wife's trying to with 1 kid in hand. I mean, you're doing what you can do, and then you're running around to farmers markets. I mean, like, were you working like 7 days a week then? Really?
Pretty much, yeah. That's why we've started to cut back. We were getting burnt out. It was just we were just bit off way too much, because we started out at the farmers markets with with beef, eggs, and vegetables, and then people come up and like, oh, well, do you have chicken or do you have pork? And then we didn't really know any better, so like, oh, why don't we raise those too?
Might as well, right?
Yeah. But it ended up just being way too much work. So we tried to streamline operations, and we had apprentices 2 summers. That helped a little bit, but it's a big learning curve as well. So I ended up spending a lot of my time just kind of teaching, and then
you have to train, right? And then it's cost on top of that too, right? The cost of your time too.
Yeah. So we did that for years, and then decided, well, we also didn't have very good accommodations for them, and so they were like partially living with us, and there's not really like rental places nearby because we're pretty far out in the countryside here.
Right.
At 80 acres, you are the nearby, right? Like,
you're the next neighbor.
You're kind of like 3 doors down, right? So
when you're in the back 40, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Jesus.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I have probably like city kid questions, because like these things I asked Kenny, and Kenny can't answer these either. Like, so during the pandemic, like everybody else, I started to grow some of my own veggies, right? We're a
Yeah.
family of 5, right? And so like you kind of quickly realize the little, tiny little like garden I have in my backyard, like that you measure in feet and
Yeah,
not in
10 by
acres.
10.
It's
Yeah.
just not like, there's nothing in it that's sustainable. Like we grew potatoes and we wiped them out in like 2 meals, right? You kind of go,
Right.
like, we never make it, right? We never make it. Like,
Yeah.
how? Because I think these are dumb city kid questions, but I also think that they're kind of like unknowledgeable Canadian questions, right? Is like, what do you need? Like how?
I get it. Like, how small is
Land do
too
you
small
need?
almost.
Like how much land do you need to support? Like say a family of 5, like how much space? Like what do I need to generate that actually feeds me? Because I think those are things that we don't understand at all, right? Like I go
Because
to
it puts
grocery store
perspective
when I
on
want
farm
to.
size too. Because
Yeah.
you've got 160 acres that you do different things on, but to Phil's point, like if you're talking to like, because people get appreciation of how this really works, like how much land do we need to support like family of 5? What
Yeah.
because they extrapolate out like
Yeah. If you knew what you're doing, had the knowledge, you could probably grow enough vegetables to feed your family for a year on like a quarter of an acre. And then say if you had like an acre plot or 1 to 2 acres, you'd have enough room to have enough chickens for all your eggs
right.
for the year. You'd be able to raise enough meat chickens for a full year. You could probably, that'd be enough room to keep a couple pigs. So a couple acres.
And then more sort of the old school farming. We're not talking this ugly.
No,
not that shit.
What I'm describing is like a homesteading.
Okay.
You're kind of living off the land. You'd be living a fairly primitive life.
But it gives you perspective, though. I mean, when you because I don't think anybody really understood. Well, we don't understand still, but we didn't really get the complexity of the food chain or the supply chain until the pandemic started throwing wrenches into everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Just a disaster. Right. And and then because I live in the city, when we had rain, like Vancouver had rain. Vancouver has rain all the time. We have 2 days of rain. And Christ, we figured out there's only 4 ways into the city and none of them we can use.
Right.
Like we were blocked off literally from everything except the States.
Yeah.
You couldn't come into the city. There's no way to get a truck in. So you start, I think in the last couple of years, to Phil's point, I think we're all kind of now thinking, shit, we better figure out how to play this game better.
We're looking at the world a little bit.
Like, got to understand this differently.
I think we're trying to encourage, we have a lot of, Canadian retail, folks that work in Canadian retail. And so I think that they just we don't understand these things, right? Like, like I can grow enough tomatoes for maybe a week and that's about it, right? Like,
yeah.
But, so it's actually really helpful to hear it, kind of put in those terms. Like basically I live on a quarter acre, so I need to annex the 3 houses around me. Actually annex the 4 houses around me so I can keep my
You want to keep the one you're in.
Yeah, and then plant over everybody else's house and then I'm okay.
Or if you work with your neighbors and say one of you grows all the vegetables, one of you
you do chickens.
Well, yeah, one of you does chickens,
okay.
One of you raise pigs, maybe one has a milk cow, and you all just barter, then you might have something.
I just met John, and John already has the wrong impression of me, right? Because he was like, you should work with your community. I'm like, I'll just wipe them out and take
I thought we were going to buy the community and just flatten everything. They go backwards, but I guess we got to find a place for those community members now that we just bought the land to make a farm for myself.
That's like the worst first impression I could ever make on somebody.
Good job, Phil.
Oh my God.
To continue on your point of how fragile food system is, to put it into perspective, 85% of the cattle that are slaughtered in Canada go through 2 packing plants. And they're both in Alberta.
Right. You got them both.
So if one of them shuts down, like there's a huge bottleneck for beef, and we saw that in 2020. Like there was a COVID outbreak. I think both plants had a COVID outbreak.
Both.
Yeah. One of them was shut down for a couple weeks, and like we use small provincially inspected abattoirs for all our processing, but it was almost overnight. All the abattoirs were like booked up solid for a year in advance, so we were left scrambling trying to get processing dates for our animals. And meanwhile, our retail sales went crazy, and we were selling out of stock, and then I couldn't get animals in to be restocked, and it was a crazy time.
I didn't know that. So 2 processing plants in Canada, and they're both in Alberta.
Yeah.
That's good. If we had a farmer on a while ago, they have their own slaughterhouse on site now, out just in Pitt Meadows, Hopcott Farms. It's small, Hopcott Farms. It's a family-run farm, similar to yours. I think they're into the 3rd generation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
but same idea, right? There's not enough. First off, I mean, I think we've all seen enough TV shows and shit. Like, really, industrial farming is really not where we need to be.
No.
That's a big problem. It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And if you look at the small, it's just trying to figure out how do you do this so that the farm, because you guys have to make a living. Like you're saying, you're still working because you still, the wife has to work because it's still hard.
Yeah.
To make it work, and it makes little sense sometimes, especially after we just came through, to not try to support, protect, or do something different or better. I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't have a clue. But again, I think that's probably where I try to have people like you on, because we're trying to understand this as well. Like what do we do?
Right. Another big restriction that small farms like me have is the supply management system we have in Canada on like poultry products, eggs, and dairy as well.
Yeah.
Like because we haven't bought into the quota system.
It's quota.
Right? Yeah, we're restricted to only raising 2,000 meat chickens in Alberta. Every province is a little bit different, and I know Ontario is even worse. I think they can only raise like 150 or 300 meat chickens a year. And in Alberta, we're restricted to having a maximum of 300 laying hens. Otherwise I have to buy into the quota system, and then my chickens have to be in climate controlled industrial sized barns where they can maintain egg production 12 months of the year.
But then we're going back to defeating the purpose of what you're trying to do. I'm assuming a lot of other people's. That's institutional industrial farming again. Like we're going, like we keep throwing it backwards. I mean, because we learned a couple things. Like when they say free range chicken, you got to really understand what that means. What does it mean? Versus, it's like running around in the actual dirt doing what chickens do.
Yeah.
Not just outside getting fresh air, but still, whatever.
Yeah. I guess the point I'm trying to make is when they put those restrictions on us, I'm not able to raise enough to be economically viable.
Yeah, I get it.
But with our production model, being on pasture, I could double or triple that production, and then I'd have a better chance of actually supporting my family and raising everything like free range, pasture raised.
Yeah, but supporting your community too. It can go to the stores in the community. Your community can eat better food as opposed to the shit that we buy in the stores.
Yeah, that's another thing. Because I'm not in the quota system, I'm not allowed to sell my poultry products to like a retail outlet.
Right.
I can only sell to the end consumer.
Yeah, which sounds great and sounds very romantic until your 15th trade, Thursday show.
Exactly.
And then you know what? She ain't too fun anymore. No, the fun wears out real fast, right? Because as much as lovely to see people and you get your regulars, and it's time. It's a lot of time.
Absolutely.
But it's not just that, right? Like it's in this day and age, it's not realistic. Like there are some folks that have tried to make a go with this, right? So they have subscription services that you can sell, kind of packages of meat, right? Because you can't ship
Yeah,
even
well,
if
AIDS, I don't know how
you
you do it.
even if you kind of digitize this and you go, listen, like if you want, because there's lots of micro farms that go, we'll flash freeze it, we'll butcher, flash freeze it, and then we'll ship you. But I've
Yeah.
now got to ship you a shipment that covers the cost of, frozen packaging, like cold chain packaging, in order to make it to your door, right? So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so now,
Complexity is
but now it's complicated, right? Because you probably need a consumer who's going to buy $200, $220, $250 worth of meat to make shipping that product worthwhile. Like that's not, some of the best digital companies haven't quite figured that out yet, right? Like, but you're going to have to figure out how to raise enough,
Yeah, but just do the math on it. It's $250, Phil, for $150 of what you would have bought.
No,
even the economics for the person buying, to think, I'd love to support this, but Jesus.
No, I don't think so. I actually think that whatever we buy from you will be better than anything I can. Well, no, I already know this, right? Like, because we've done this. Like, there's a business called True Local out of Ottawa, right?
Okay.
They do this subscription service, flash frozen, but we know, like, the meat you get, everything is better than you would get from the grocery store. So that's not an issue. But the problem is the work doubles for you, right? Is not only now are you running a farm, but you got to be up on e-commerce trends. You got to figure out, like, how do I digitally market
logistics
to consumers?
Too,
like, I got to work out an entire cold chain logistics just to try and make sure
that's honestly the thing I hate the most about being a farmer is staying up with our social media account.
I get it though. Yeah. It's hard, right? Especially if you're being handcuffed in so many other ways. You might not hate it as much if you could triple the hens, if you could do other things so that you could do some business, like you could actually make this viable, because you're not killing yourself otherwise.
No, yeah. And like it makes sense in the industrial model why farms are all just specializing and focusing in on one crop or one type of production, one type of animal production, just because it makes your life easier. But yeah, I think there needs to be a happy medium.
How does that play into the regenerative though? This is where it doesn't work. But the only reason it works is because it's a bottom line play. It's got nothing to do with anything else. Right? If you just do one thing, like Henry Ford did. I mean, we think about it. McDonald's does it. You do one thing, you do it really well. Yeah. It's boring as hell. There's no variety. There's nothing. But you can churn, like you can do shit.
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean you get a good product.
No.
That doesn't mean you've done anything decent for the environment or anything else. You haven't done much of anything good. It's got us cheap meat.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I'm saying there's a happy medium there. Like we tried going too far the other way of doing everything here, right? And one farm can't do everything. If you do,
go back to your neighbor example though. Like you did this one, and then the other 160 did the other thing or whatever.
Yeah,
you got better odds. Then it's a co-op. You're back to that even, right? Potentially.
Keep a big part about regenerative agriculture is keeping the livestock out on the land. Like we try to keep everything out in the pastures as much as possible. So they're spreading the manure out themselves, and we don't have to deal with that. And it's like that's how we're what's the word I'm looking for? Like we're growing more grass, we're healing our ecosystem here. We have like tons of wildlife, insects, and just increasing the biodiversity,
right,
by getting the livestock out on the land and different types of livestock. Just because there's no monocultures in nature. There's a diversity of plants and animals, and so if you want to be regenerative, you basically have to have your farm mirror what's happening out in nature.
Right. So when you talk regenerative, does it sort of mean like if you let the chickens run on this 20 for a year or two, humor me because I have no clue. They do that and the cows go up into the other one and this one's being farmed. Is it sort of like the old sort of, not fallowing, but where periodically you don't let the chickens do that. Maybe now that's the farm one and the chickens go where the cows were and the cows go where the old farm was. That like sort of what the game is?
Yeah, basically. But on a lot smaller time frames. So like ideally we'd be moving our cows every day. That's been our goal. We haven't always achieved that, but to have them be eating on a different piece of grass basically every day, and then the key is to give the areas that they were grazing, give that enough rest time so the grass can grow back up before it gets eaten again. Because the idea is you want to have as much leaf matter on the grass to collect solar energy, and so then your plants are taking in more carbon dioxide and then depositing carbon down into their roots and into the soil. So then we're sequestering carbon that way.
Got it.
But like 320 acres, like if you got to move cows like every day, like this is old school, like cowboys, man. Like you got to get someone out, and I don't think you can't just phone the cows up. I'm assuming, say, hey guys, you got to move to, slide over a couple feet.
Actually, you can. If you set it up with electric fence.
So you kind of just force them along, sort of thing.
You're not even forcing them. You just, once they're trained, you walk out there and open the wire. They're all
that's awesome.
To run to the fresh grass. It takes
seriously.
It's not a painful process at all. If you get your fences set up properly, you just open the wire and they all go running into the
almost do a remote.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't realize you could, because I'm thinking that shit. I need cowboys.
Right? Yeah.
Like, seriously, like that's getting expensive again. Because then you need, like, you're starting to build an infrastructure again. Like, think, holy shit, this is going to get, gets a little bit out of control again.
Yeah, I know there are some like bigger ranches. I think mostly down in the States. I haven't heard of anyone in Canada, but they have large enough herds that they'll have a couple of cowboys that live out with the herds, and they're actually like herding them around, moving around the rangelands in the summertime.
Yeah, you're on tens of thousands of acres at that point, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and every day they have to move, and the chickens too, like, or they get to hang out.
Like our meat chickens in the movable pens, they're sitting on. I move those twice a day, so they're always on fresh grass. And then you should see the regrowth after, like, I don't know, several weeks after the chickens have been there, because
I bet they've been depositing.
Chicken manure is really high in nitrogen, and the grass just grows like crazy. Yeah,
it's green as green.
Yeah, so then we bring the cows through there, and they benefit from all that extra grass growth.
This makes me tired.
I know, I'm exhausted too, because I think it's.
Yeah, I wouldn't be like, I forget to send emails. Like, I don't know how I would remember to repeat.
Well, I'd be like the social media part. Now I'd be thinking like, screw this, whatever. You know what? Just call people to the farm. Just take pictures. You do just Instagram it a little bit. I got no time. Just say nice things, and we'll all be happy.
It's literally how I feel a lot of days when I go out to do stuff, and I'm like, I should be videoing this or taking pictures.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a 3-second thought, and then that thought's gone.
Yeah. But then if you're not staying in people's feeds and staying in front of them, then they stop ordering.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that too, because I think that's one of those things. Like we have been on a bit of a journey, because we had we have folks that fish. So we had Skipper Auto on, and they do this kind of again, subscription model, but they basically, they have a credit system. So you buy in, and then you choose what fish you can get, and then once they catch it, they flash freeze them and send them to you, right?
You should check it out. Skipper Auto. I use it. Like, I get fish every month, and it's gotten to the point where it's really hard to buy store-bought fish.
Store-bought fish,
right?
Yeah.
Because even my wife and my son, because my daughter's no longer at home, my son's at home. Like we all notice that I'm paying a little more.
Yeah.
Right. Which is where I was going back to before. Like it's, for the $200 that I pay for this, if I went to a store, it would probably cost me 125.
Right.
But it's, man, the shit that like you really appreciate how bad the food is sometimes, that we're used to thinking is pretty good until you have some really good food.
Right. Yeah. Like we won't eat chicken out of the store anymore after eating our own chicken.
I bet.
There's just no difference. There was a couple years ago, we sold out of chicken in January, and I made the mistake of not saving enough for our family.
Oh, you had to go buy chicken.
And we literally didn't eat chicken until June when we had our next chickens ready.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, so what they do some social media, but I guess because the other way they do it is because they're, kind of like they rely on rotational stock, what's available to be caught. Yeah. People are always paying attention because they're, like, I would like some salmon. And they go, sorry, there's no salmon stock right now.
Right.
It's from mackerel or something else. Or
I put my sablefish order in because sablefish, I think tomorrow, if I didn't put an order in, I'm not buying tons, but if I don't put the order in, they're not going to have anything left, because the fishermen or people are fishing now. They flash these on boat and then whatever. And it's almost like a cooperative idea, but it's ready to go. But next week there is no sablefish. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
So next week, I don't know, but let's say chums in season, or,
right.
I mean, I bought some Arctic char, which was, I never bought Arctic char in my life. It was ridiculous. It was so good.
I bet. And we have kind of a similar subscription program too. Like people will prepay for basically 12 dozen eggs, and then when I do my deliveries into Edmonton or out to Jasper, then they'll pick up basically 2 dozen every 2 weeks, and then we have those revolving we basically do on every quarter. So we have we call it a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So an idea. I mean, the CSA model was first developed around like vegetables, and the idea is you're buying like a portion of the harvest,
right?
And on if the farmer has a good harvest or a poor harvest, the amount of vegetables fluctuates based on how productive the year was. So we did that a couple years with vegetables as well, but then because of it, we were all just doing too much work.
Well, it's complexity. You got only X amount of hours in a day. Like in terms of your meat, though, because I went online and took a quick peek at the page before. It's either pick up or drop off, and like you can't. Like if I wanted to order, let's say I wanted to order a dozen steaks. Like I can't order from you to ship here.
No, we don't do any shipping. It's all either pick up at the farm or delivering to your house.
Now, is some of that restrictive because of the actual supply chain, or is it the border in the middle too? Like I can't just go buy Alberta beef, I guess, like right from a farm and have it shipped into BC. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm asking more than anything. Like we're not allowed to buy wine in Alberta technically and drive back to BC.
Right. You could drive here and pick it up from my farm and take it back. But yeah, legally, I can't ship it to you.
Ship it to me.
I can't to the province because it was processed in a provincially inspected abattoir. If it was done in a federally inspected plant, then I could ship it nationally or internationally.
Right.
I know there's work being done to try to change those laws to kind of get all the provinces on the same set of standards. So
easier. Come on, man. It's
but
one country.
I know it's like I'm involved with the Alberta beef producers. It's kind of a lobby group for the cattle industry. Yeah. I know they're working on trying to break down the restrictions on interprovincial selling of meat products and beef. but it's, you know how government is. Everything is it's like pulling teeth sometimes.
Well, it's also depends on the mood of the public, right?
Yeah.
People don't want. First off, there's not enough of you, so who cares? I mean, that's because that's how mentality people would be. And then you also have, a lot of people, rightly so, sort of pissed with, the mediatarians, probably the three of us here, and that, which again is not necessarily the fault of the end consumer. It's how the model's built, and that's what we buy into,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because like I say, I've been buying my fish. I'm paying more. I already know that. It's worth it, man. It's worth every penny.
That's awesome.
Period. Well, support local. I mean, it's not local Vancouver, but the West Coast. The fishermen or fisher people are on the package. It tells you, John went out and picked these hens or eggs today, or whatever, and they'll give you the little story. It's actually kind of nice because that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
John was actually out on the farm and was actually picking the egg or getting eggs or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I know what John does because I don't know how John stays awake, but that's a whole different podcast. We'll do a sleep deprivation podcast another day.
That was a couple of years ago. I was getting pretty wore down, but yeah, now that we don't have pigs anymore, I'm slowly catching up on my sleep.
Shit.
Oh my god.
Craziness. But I was just gonna tell a little story. The best had we were at a farmer's market and we had a lineup of customers, and a new customer was questioning me about my eggs, like how do you raise your hens and what do you feed them and all this. And one of my regulars was standing behind him in line, and she just poked her head around and said, "These are the best eggs in Edmonton." And I was like,
case closed. Move on, buddy. Just buy the damn eggs and head out.
Yeah.
So buy them or shut up and go away.
Exactly.
The eggs and you're holding everybody else up now. So
it's not a quiz, man. The guy knows what he's doing. Let's go. Pitter patter.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's boost. It's moments like that make up for the lack of sleep.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I mean, whether you're fishing, farming, hunting, whatever, it really has to be. Passion has to be a large part of it, because honestly, sanity won't play well into it. Because you got to be nuts. You really do. I think you guys are all nuts because it's a tough gig, and it's rewarding probably personally, but it's hard.
It is.
It's hard. You seem to have everything against you. The government just honestly is a big freaking obstacle and stupid.
It is.
Again, I'm glad we got regulation. I'm glad we're in Canada. I like the regulations, but I work in the industry too, like more like on the retail side. But cheese quotas, milk quotas, for Christ's sakes, guys, seriously.
Yeah.
Well, what are we protecting these days? We got some of the best milk, some of the best cheeses in the world. Open it up. Let's go.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
But I think that's the point, right? Is I don't think, outside of this podcast and, kind of talking to people that are in the industry, I don't think Canadians understand this at all.
They have no clue.
Like we've no clue that, like I had no clue. Like to me, it seems like a simple process, right? You grow chickens, right? And you should have.
I can grow 1,000 chickens. I have the room. We'll grow 1,000 chickens.
You should have the right to sell them anywhere you want to sell them, right? So I don't understand why the chicken mafia have to be able to say, I said it. So I want to be clear if anybody's listening that I said chicken mafia, John said nothing, but you know what I mean? But like why is that something that you're blocked from doing?
Right. And if you're regulated, John, and you follow the rules, then the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
Follow the rules. I mean, so you have 10,000 chickens. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You're treating them well, and if you got the space, and as long as you're doing the right practices so you don't kill us, right?
Yeah.
So you're responsible now because you're the one doing this.
Yeah.
I don't care how many chickens you do. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah. Our chickens are all processed in a inspected facility. They're all deemed healthy and fit for and safe to eat. Yeah. And it's just because I haven't bought into the quota system, then I'm restricted on how many I can raise, where I can sell them. And it's like it's almost like a millionaires club to be in the quota system.
Yeah.
It's very restrictive on new entrants to the industry.
It used to be with cheese, my friend, for years and years. The cheese quota was what it was, and the only way you could get it if someone sold it to you, someone died,
Right.
and that was it. And there was no more quota. So in our country, you had people like Saputo, and large places had all the quota, or the vast majority of the quota, and those who held on to it. Shit, if you had 10,000 kilos a year, 15, like you could sell that stuff for 10, 15, $20 a kilo.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why we pay so much for cheese.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the whole dairy industry is still under that quota system.
It's crazy. I mean, it's loosened up a little bit on the cheese side. It's like now, you can apply for it if you're a large enough retailer, et cetera, distributor. There's ways around it, but it's still, I don't think Canadians understand the amount of it inhibits one really cool stuff coming into the country. It inhibits people like you from doing the thing you really want to do and be able to actually feed all of us, so we wouldn't have to have our chickens flown around the world. You know what I mean? Like, it should be close to home. I mean, that's the whole point of this.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard recently that a lot of the chicken wings eaten in Canada come from Brazil.
See, if that's actually true, that's beyond sad.
You know how there's like bars will have Wing Wednesday, cheap wings? Yeah. A lot of those wings I've heard come from Brazil because they can buy them cheaper there than what we can produce them here.
But that's wrong.
No, that's wrong.
It's not like we don't have the space. I don't know if you guys if we haven't looked at our map recently, we've got a little bit of room.
Yeah.
We have some room. Like, we actually have a little bit of room in this country. In case anybody's interested, there's a little room. We have room.
Yeah, for sure. And another big one is the law against selling raw milk.
Oh, that one that never made sense, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah. If you're caught selling raw milk, it's
like,
it's worse than dealing cocaine.
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah. And we get people asking us frequently, like, do you sell milk? And I'm like, no, it's highly illegal, and I can't risk it.
Yeah. Well, you need to be in Lethbridge or Vancouver, and you just hop across the line.
Right. Okay.
Well, because they can do it in the States, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not all. I think they might have rules down there too, but I think Washington State, if I'm not mistaken, or you guys are Idaho, Montana. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's a game, but which is crazy enough. It's this imaginary line that divides the two. And then we look at our provinces. You're telling me that BC's rules are so good that I can't do anything in Alberta, but in Alberta, your rules are so good you can't do, the BC. Like, really? Like,
oh, I know, it's crazy. They need to all get on the same playing field.
Seriously, right?
Yeah. And like, I was raised on raw milk. We had a family milk cow. We milked by hand, and we never got sick.
I think there's tens of thousands of people in this country that were raised on raw milk. Now, whether you believe in raw milk is a whole different, again, it's another podcast.
Yeah.
Right. But, you don't have to eat the chickens we're talking about or the beef either. And
yeah,
I'm sure we lost the vegans a long time ago. But, it's not a big deal, but at least allow the system to run.
Yeah. But their whole excuse that it's a public health concern is, I think that's been debunked a long time ago.
Most of the stuff's been debunked.
Well, look, if you want to look at it from a cultural perspective, if you look at Quebec, for example, everything in Quebec is the best stuff in Quebec is all unpasteurized, right? Like the best cheeses, right? Like they had a big thing. I think it was just pre-pandemic, right? They were starting to shut down, local grocers who were carrying, like raw or dangerous cheeses, if you will. And everyone's like, those are the best cheeses. Like, why would I go buy the other? Like, I can get raw milk cheeses. Like, that's the best cheese, right? Like, that's the ones that we want, right? Like, such a,
and people sitting there, I've been eating this for 80 years.
Yeah, that's right. Like,
oh well.
Yeah, my goodness. Thank you. I actually can't believe we're
I know, I can't believe it's already 50 minutes, but
really?
Yeah. But we really thank you for doing this with us. And thank you for putting up with us.
And thanks for the patience you have and shown it. I mean, it's appreciated. And I know probably some of the things you think, okay, these guys are idiots. Just so you're clear,
Yeah, 100%.
we're like most of the country.
100%.
We just don't get because we don't farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. And
Oh, my pleasure. God Almighty.
that's
Awesome.
that's been another big thing that we've found since trying to direct market. Just all the consumer education that's involved in informing the public on what we do and how your food's produced. Because I think there's a huge disconnect in how food is produced I would say in this country, but it's probably in North America.
I think it's in North America. It's probably more in the developing countries who really have lost sight of sort of how things probably should be done. I don't know if there's a better way to say that, but whatever. And then what we'll do too is, I mean, because we do post it, we'll share this too. I think, Phil, we should even probably call someone like Bianca from Alberta Food and Bev, and maybe they can talk about it. Because I think the more people that do understand this, again, whether you believe in it or not, or it doesn't matter. Skip the animal part if you're vegan. It's relatable to the vegetables and all the other farming as well, right? I mean, it's the small scale farming is what really needs to probably happen in the country more so than anything else.
I think that's it's interesting because the other parts of me that are thinking about this is there's a little bit of like, guess the number of jelly beans in a jar here. Because there's a bit of a contest, but really, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you kind of said because if you said to me, dare you to try and grow enough veggies to feed your family, like my family would be dead, right? Like, because, you feed
it for about a week.
Like nobody's business, right? Like, so you kind of go, like, I'm nowhere close, right? Like, I'm nowhere, like, I should bulldoze everything I have in my backyard, and I may be able to, like, grow enough for one season, right? But, and all the other things that come with, like, how do I preserve some of this stuff? How do I keep this stuff, like, from going bad before I get to the spring of the next year is a totally different conversation, right? But I wonder if somewhere in there, there's a challenge for Canadians to try and figure out, like, if you had to figure out how much space you needed to grow enough veggies to feed your family, what would that number look like, right? Yeah. Like, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that we wouldn't get it right. Like, I don't think we would get that even close, I think.
No, but I would encourage everybody to start growing something.
You'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
You'll appreciate it.
And it'll taste way better.
It's amazing, right? It's true. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm of Italian background, right? So everybody in Trail, where I grew up, like all the Italians had gardens. Okay. I had a garden when I first moved to Vancouver, and we would grow tomatoes, and we made the wine and stuff. Like, we did all that.
Yeah.
Because it's good to do that. And if you can grow, like Phil said though, but I did one large, probably let's say maybe let's say it was a 12 liter, 15 liter tub. I threw some potato scraps and you know what I mean? Just to grow potatoes. They come out really cool. They're great and stuff. But I'm like Phil, I think, that was 2 fast meals. And I'm still hungry. So and then you start doing the math and you go, well, that took 2 meals. Holy shit. The whole yard would just be potatoes. Where the hell's the tomatoes going to go? Like, I need level farming here, man, because in this city, can you imagine what a farm costs?
Right. Yeah.
we had a good laugh over bok choy, right? Because we're Chinese, so we eat a lot of bok choy, right? So I planted like a dozen bok choy because I was like, this will be enough, right? And I'm snipping them like the first time, like it took me so long to harvest like this tiny little pile. And that, like, I think one kid wiped it out, right? And I was just like, that's like an entire winter. Like, you've just killed the entire family. You needed to eat.
That's what you got to tell me. You know how long that took him to make?
Yeah,
you know how long?
Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, so many things we don't know.
I commend you for growing bok choy because the flea beetles wiped mine out when we tried to grow them here. I couldn't keep the flea beetles out.
Funny, eh?
It took me 3 summers to get it right. So the first summer the flea beetles got them, and then the second summer the rabbits got to them, right? Because rabbits really love bok choy apparently. So I was like, like this. But I managed to get some, right? And then the one kid got to it and wiped it out. So,
That's awesome.
John, before you go, if people want to find you and ask you crazy questions like ours, what's is it best to like go to your social media handles or
LinkedIn, the webpage.
LinkedIn, the webpage? What's the best place to kind of like find you?
Yeah, anywhere that's all of our Stonepost Farms stuff. So we're on Instagram, Facebook. You could email us info@stonepostfarms.ca. I don't check LinkedIn that often, so it was actually, you're lucky that I got back to you on there.
You know what? I didn't think I had odds even when I started, so I was pretty happy when you did get back because I couldn't find it where else to find you, right? That's so, and I did it. I was going to try to find him. Others it ends up info, nobody's going to pay attention. Oh, there's some nut in Vancouver wants to have a podcast. Loser.
It's actually me and Becky both see the info.
Okay.
But it's mostly just me because she's busy with her job. So yeah, on the surface we might look like a big operation, but it's just the two of us and me doing most of it right now.
That's pretty awesome.
We know the feeling that the two of us are co-founders in a tea business. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's so cool," and you're like,
"No,
yeah, kind of." But
it is cool. It's very cool. But yeah,
we do the social media, we do the marketing, we do the
Yeah.
So we feel you. Like it's like,
the romance is only from the outside.
Yeah.
Once you're in, you're thinking, no, it's not that romantic.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad you came on. I really am. I'm glad you did this. I'm glad you humored us, and you're a good sport. And thank you for doing what you do.
You bet.
It's great, and I'm sure the people around you who have your food are thanking you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
Our pleasure, man. Our pleasure.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Have a nice evening, Phil. You stick around.
Night.
John, take care of yourself, and thanks again.
Okay. You bet. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
I don't know how farmers do it.
I don't have any clue.
I don't know how they do it. It just seems like so much work, man.
Yeah, I don't have any
so
clue.
much work.
I don't know how that happens. I don't know.
So many rules.
Yeah. I think that's the part that's the part that really gets me. Like I don't get I just don't get why if we have safety rules, I get safety rules and I get why we have safety rules. Like it's like a restaurant, right? Like
I'm good with safety rules.
You need an A, B, and C. You got to pass. You got to do all the right things. But when you do, why can you not sell it where you want to sell it?
Right. But all of it, Phil. Forget you can't go to the store. But I can sell to a consumer, but not a store consumer. Okay. Well, I don't understand that. I'm in BC. I want Alberta beef. But you can't order because you can't come across the border because it's different. It's provincial run. Who gives a shit? Why don't you just set the same standards? Why BC standards so much better? Because it works the other way too. So when Alberta's looks, well, you can't have it from BC. Their standards over there, right? And BC, come on, it's Alberta. Their standards. Seriously?
So
2014, 2024.
So the provincial stuff, I don't. So I don't.
It's all stupid.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. So I can't say that I don't see why provincially we have some rules, although theoretically I think they're stupid, right? But I do think maybe there's a reason for some of those. I just don't get, like, I don't get like a farmer like John. Why do you need a quota? Like if
who made the 1,000 chickens? Let's do it this way. So if I got 1,001, the 1,000 is the number. Someone drew a line in the sand one time and said, "Yeah, hey, can't have more than 1,000." All right,
but I should
what?
But if I figured out how to grow the 1,000 or 2,000, and I was good at it, and I knew what I was doing, why am I not free to sell these to Safeway or to
because you go back into
these or do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
because it's the way you set up the system. You can drive and you take your family to the mall, but you can't take people to the mall. In the old days, because you had to get taxi licenses. And there's nothing wrong with the system necessarily. Milk quotas are the same. Dairy quotas are the same. Wheat quotas, all of it. It's intended to protect the industry that's there, and I get that. But these people are part of the industry. Who are you protecting now? Because if you do it the way we're doing it, all we're protecting is the very large who can pay and play in the quota game. That's not for the benefit of me and you. That's not protecting Canadians. We don't trust John. We think John cheats, right? That's what we're saying. Like, John is going to hurt us because he doesn't have the quota number, really.
But I guess, I mean, the flip side is true too. Is there is a, I mean, it's ironic we're talking about it here because we're a retail podcast, but there's a better way, and some of that involves skipping retail.
Again,
right?
But it doesn't have
look
to.
Look at all the moments that we've said are better for us. So Skipper Auto is better, right? And that skips retail, right? When I use True Local, right, better. The meat is better, and I skip retail entirely, right? Like, John talked about like kind of this local oh crap, I'm so bad with names, but what did he call it? A CSA.
Yeah.
A CSA, right? And so, I started looking up CSAs, and like Ontario has a whole bunch of CSAs. CSA farms, right? Like CSA, there's a CSA farm directory, that allows you to help figure out who is in your neighborhood that you might want to, support, community.
But do it this way. You don't need to kick out the retailer. Do it this way, because this is government calls and spells, not the retailer necessarily. If John was in Kelowna or John was in Trail, he can't go sell to Danny at Ferrero Foods, and he can't go sell to Peter at Pizza.
That's right.
Those two guys would be like back in on Smarty. They'd be supporting these guys all day, every day. Every day. There would be no issue with a retailer having the product on the shelves, because those two guys would be all over and they would take this stuff, but they can't because of some goofy number that at this number, you can tell any consumer in Canada or in Alberta you want, but you can't sell to in the stores because that's a different consumer. Those are different consumers than the ones you're going to sell to. But if you do 1,005 and you get quota, you can now go sell to those consumers you couldn't have a minute ago, because they've changed. Because somehow the quota you got changed that consumer into being now acceptable. Do you get what I mean? Like, where's the law?
No, I'm there with you. I totally get it. I guess
it's
just
so stupid. Why don't you just force John to do things properly? You know what? And John has a little extra paperwork to do. I mean, it's government. Okay, fine. But let John play. Because John, he'd go to, John's got I'm sure a Danny Ferrero or Peter Boyd in his neighborhood that would be happy to stock his chickens all year.
Yeah.
Every day, day in, day, and the community would love it.
Yeah.
And even if they paid a little bit more than the shit that we buy. Seriously?
Yeah.
It's crazy, Phil. Seriously, it's just nuts. I don't sometimes, I don't know. I don't even sometimes, it just gets frustrating. So stupid.
We're going to finish on Kenny doesn't know.
I don't get it. I don't understand. That's it.